Hi, I'm Father Joseph Mary, and welcome back to A Simple Word, where we reflect on the gospel for the coming Sunday. The Pellicano was once considered the most unwanted ship in the world. For more than 2 years, it floated on the open seas, and no port in the world would allow it to dock. The hulking ship was turned away from at least 11 countries, including Honduras, Costa Rica, Cape Verde, and the Bahamas. The ship floated the Caribbean, West Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Indian Ocean. It was allowed to dock only long enough to refuel and was then forced back to sea. During all that time, the Pellicano changed names twice, but still, it was not allowed to dock at port. The reason for this complete rejection of the Pellicano was because in 1986, the sanitation workers in Philadelphia went on strike for nearly an entire month. An incredible amount of trash accumulated in the city streets, and the city didn't know what to do with it. They tried to ship the trash to dump sites in Ohio and Georgia, but the states refused such a massive load. So finally, in desperation, the city ended up incinerating the trash into 28 million pounds of scrap and ash and dumping it into the belly of a ship called the Pellicano. The ship was literally a floating garbage dump filled with megatons of rotting refuse and toxic elements from arsenic to lead. No nation in the world wanted the Pellicano. It had a cargo of trash that it couldn't dump anywhere. Life can also have a way of dumping its junk on us sometimes. Whether it's because of our sins, the sufferings we go through, or the way we're treated by others, we can become burdened under the weight of life's trash. And this can become toxic, producing anger, resentment, fear, and anxiety. We can end up like the Pellicano, floating from one person to another, from one miserable situation to another, feeling unwanted and incapable of letting things go. And we can end up exhausted under the weight of such an incredible burden, weary of the struggles of life. And it's the people just such as these, weighed down by the burdens of life, that Jesus addresses the words in Sunday's gospel. He says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest." Jesus was speaking to the little ones, the poor, the suffering, the sinner, those who recognized their affliction and were crying out to God for help, those who had been beaten down by life. In many ways, the Jewish faith of the scribes and the Pharisees was a religion of endless rules and burdens. And Jesus himself says this. They bind heavy burdens and lay them on men's shoulders. Instead, Jesus is inviting the suffering and the sinner to himself. Come to me and find rest. I can give you the peace your soul is seeking. Then Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart, and you will find rest for yourselves. For my yoke is easy and my burden light." Jesus invites us to take his yoke upon our shoulders. Now, when we hear the word yoke, we think again of a constraining burden or an afflicting weight. But Jesus is really contrasting the yoke he offers us with the yoke of the scribe and the Pharisees. He says, "My yoke is easy." And the word translated easy is the Greek Christos, which is much more accurately translated as well-fitting. In first century Palestine, the yoke of oxen was made of wood, and the yoke were carefully and individually crafted to fit each ox. There was a legend told that when Jesus was working as a carpenter in Nazareth, he built the best ox yokes in Galilee, and that farmers came from all the surrounding towns and villages to purchase these custom yokes. And there was a sign hung above his carpenter shop which read, "My yoke fits well." Jesus is telling us, don't be yoked by the seductions of this world. Don't allow yourselves to be yoked by the pursuit of power and wealth and pleasure, because those yokes will exhaust you. They'll weary your soul with terrible burden. Instead, he tells us, my yoke is easy. My yoke will fit you well. The task that I have appointed you, the road I've set before you, the cross I ask you to bear, has been custom made for your salvation. And so as we reflect on this living word in this frightening time of coronavirus and chaos and confusion, let's not allow ourselves to seek rest and peace in the things of this world. Instead, let's take everything we're experiencing today, everything we're going through, our worries and our fears, to Jesus. Because only in him will we discover true rest for our souls and strength to carry the cross he's tailor-made for each one of us. I'm Father Joseph Mary. Thanks for listening to A Simple Word. If you found this reflection helpful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.